Randip, it looks like the Oilers are the favorite to acquire a three-time Stanley Cup champion, a Conn Smythe winner, two-time Norris winner. Here's the thing, though. Duncan Keith is about to turn 38 years old and is definitely not the guy that helped Chicago win all those trophies and those individual awards as well. So what's the fit for the Edmonton Oilers?
Okay, the positive thing here, Dan, is that Duncan Keith played 23 minutes a game last year. Unfortunately, he played 23 minutes per game on the worst defense in the league, or one of the worst defenses in the league. So, okay, Duncan Keith, what he brings to the Edmonton Oilers, if this deal is done, is it's a leadership aspect here. This is a guy that has that pedigree, as you mentioned. He's won, the Norris. He's won the Stanley Cup. He's been a part of a culture that is a winning culture. He helped to set that standard. And what do the Edmonton Oilers need right now? They need experience, that winning experience especially. So as much as we want to look at the on-ice aspect of Duncan Keith, I think if the Oilers go after this move, it's to add a winner to that room, and a room that desperately needs it. And beyond that, the mentorship role, right? This is a guy that has kind of had that role with an Adam Boqvist in Chicago. But Boqvist wasn't able to grow beyond that because he needed to see the ice a little bit more, and Duncan Keith was kind of taking that away from him. But in Edmonton, what you're going to have is you're going to have a couple of young defensemen. You've got Evan Bouchard coming up the ranks. You've got a Philip Broberg potentially as well, making that jump over to North America at some point. Can Duncan Keith, A, stabilize probably that third pair of defense, maybe that second pair, and B, can he create a culture there for the young guys and some of the veterans that is a winning culture? That's your selling point if you're Edmonton.
He really just can't be a big minutes eater. As you mentioned off the top, the amount of time he'd been playing with Chicago, he's too long in the tooth for that. I still think there's some value there. I don't think he's a complete zero as some make it out to be right now for Duncan Keith, but he's absolutely not worth $5.5 million against the cap. And since he is trying to get out to Western Canada, maybe the Pacific Northwest, and really, Vancouver's not making this deal. Calgary's not making this deal. So all of a sudden, you're either Seattle or Edmonton. And right now, as we mentioned off the top, Edmonton is the favorite. So I think Ken Holland has to use that card, play that card, use that leverage. And I don't see how you make a deal if you're the Oilers unless James Neal is involved. The salaries kind of match up. Neal's a little bit more expensive. It's got to be similar to the Neal for Lucic trade that they made with Calgary a couple of years ago. That's the only way I see this working for the Edmonton Oilers.
Okay, I see a problem with that deal based on the fact that if you're Chicago, part of this is financial flexibility. So if you're asking, if you're being asked to retain salary on Duncan Keith, which I assume is part of the ask, you're not taking more money coming back the other way, $5.7 million. They've got probably, if you look at it, they're probably a team that wants to go after maybe a Dougie Hamilton or a Seth Jones. If you're putting together a package, you do not want James Neal's money coming back the other way. The other thing I would say is you've got to pay some of your younger players as well. Kevin Lankin, you've got, Alex Nylander. There's a whole list of players that they're going to have to pay this coming year and the year after as well. You don't want to add a James Neal contract here. This is where you have leverage. If you're Chicago, you're saying, no. You got to give us an asset. You got to give us something of substance. We're not taking more dead money coming this way. Chicago, if they want to extend that window for Patrick Kane to maybe have a playoff run one more time or make the playoffs one time with Jonathan Taves as well, taking back James Neal the other way ain't going to help. So to me, it doesn't make that much sense, Dan.
Well, I definitely see that, Randy. But, look, you're Edmonton. Okay, what does Chicago want? Maybe Caleb Jones coming back the other way to help their Seth Jones pitch with Columbus and getting him to a long-term deal if they do go down that road and trade. I know that's something that's being rumored a lot. But look, you're the one taking on this big contract or trying to help facilitate this deal. I just don't see how Edmonton or Chicago can make this deal without the salaries kind of matching. And on top of that, if you're Ken Holland, did you come into the offseason being like, Duncan Keith is the guy we need to go and get? We need some veteran leadership on defense. I don't see that as what the Oilers were looking at to upgrade this team this offseason.
If you ask me about fit, the better fit is on Seattle because he could kind of play that Derek Engelland role, right? We saw him go to Vegas, all of a sudden re-energize his career, became a leader on Seattle, was a captain essentially And you saw him kind of maybe his play pickup as well, but he was a leader in that community. I could see that with Duncan Keith in Seattle. In Edmonton, I would still focus on the forward group. If you're going to spend money, if you're going to go after somebody, whether it's free agency, the trade route, go after that gap that you have in your roster right now, which is essentially the second and third line. There's going to be some pretty decent players available, in free agency. So if you want to pay money and you want to pay $4 or $5 million, guess what? There's going to be some decent forwards that you can splash some money. But beyond that, even around the draft, are you in a position to make some deals? If you are giving up assets, or if you're looking for a dead money play, James Neal for something that may be, a contract that's a problem on some other teams, but may prove to be useful on yours. I think there's better plays out there to actually address the weakness on this roster, Dan, which is, in my opinion, I said this going back at the trade deadline, it was that middle six position. You need more wingers on this group to play up and down the lineup, and that's the gap I see. So you asked me what Duncan Keith can bring to a roster. Intangibles, leadership. But is that what the Edmonton Oilers need for priority one this year? I don't think so. I think you got to look at that forward group.
And the Oilers are already getting a new contract done with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. They still have Adam Larson to deal with, and we'll see what else comes available. But, this is also part and parcel with Oscar Klefbom and his uncertainty moving forward on their back end. They don't feel like Broberg is ready to take that step. Maybe Bouchard is, but as you mentioned, getting that extra leadership might help. And my final thought on this too is the Pacific Division. I think we all look at Vegas and say they're going to be pretty good again, probably winning the division. But Edmonton, okay, yes, they've got Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. That gives them a leg up on everybody else. I don't think Seattle's going to be a pushover. The Canucks want to be aggressive this offseason and be better than they were last year. Probably weren't as bad as they showed to be last year. Calgary is not going to go away quietly after the big offseason they had last year. And the LA Kings just went out and got Victor Arvidsson, and they're planning to do more. So the Pacific Division, while it may seem wide open, if you lose ground on some of these teams that are trying to make additions, that could be tenuous for the Edmonton Oilers. What do you think is the fit for Duncan Keith on the Edmonton Oilers? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.